Okay, thanks.
Yeah, the light's on.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the October 17th meeting of the Land Acquisition and Preservation Committee. I'm Ann Kennedy. I'm the chair, and I'd like to introduce the rest of the board, committee, beginning with Miss Ann.
My name is Ann Rowland, and I represent Centerville.
Phyllis Miller, Katuitt.
Tracy Pratt, Katuitt.
Chris Clark, Town Council Liaison.
Go ahead, Kim, please introduce yourself.
Kim McGuire, President, Save Twin Brooks.
Brian Hughes, Vice President, Save Twin Brooks.
Doug Payson, LAPC member from Barnstable Village.
Kate Gulliver, Hyannisport.
Farley Lewis, Vice Chair, Hyannisport. Jenna Zeno, Administrative Assistant.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome our newest member, Kate Gulliver.
Welcome.
Kate, I don't want to put you on the spot, but would you like to say anything about yourself or tell us a little bit about your interest and why you decided to put your hat in this particular ring?
Well, I am.
And you have to talk into this thing very loudly.
I have a lifelong interest in conservation, and I've been chairman of the Conservation Committee at the Austral Garden Club for many years, and I'm on the board of Save Twin Brooks as well, which is also interested in preserving land. And so it's just conservation, environmental issues, wildlife preservation, all that have been my major interests for a very long time. And Farley suggested that I might be interested in joining this committee.
Okay, well, we're very glad to have you, so welcome. Thank you. The agenda is rather full, so what I would like to suggest, and Liz Lewis, another member of our committee, has arrived.
Yeah, traffic on Willow Street.
I know, it was pretty bad. I came that way, too.
I should just point out that I believe now this committee is fully appointed.
Yes, it is fully appointed.
Thanks.
But if you are interested in joining, please let me know or let our town council administrator know, and, we'll put you on the list, and because people will, have terms and things like that, so we'll have openings in the future. You'll notice I have to say this, notice of recording. Please note this meeting is recorded and broadcast on Channel 18 in accordance with MGL Chapter 30A, subsection 20. I must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting, and if so, make their presence known. Seeing none, we'll continue. We're going to do the approval of minutes, but when we get down to topics for discussion, we're going to switch around a little bit because we have people here to do a little discussion, and so we want to not make them sit through all our horribles, our tedious stuff. It's not horrible, tedious. Let's start with the approval of minutes. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at the July 11th meeting minutes and the September 12th meeting minutes? We'll do approval one at a time. Has everybody looked at them?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion for the July 11th meeting minutes?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any revisions or changes? Okay, seeing none, can I have a vote in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. How about the motion for the September 12th meeting minutes? Doug, go ahead.
I move that we accept the
September
minutes for the
12th.
September 12th meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any revisions or changes? Okay, seeing none, can I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have a 2023 calendar. Have we circulated that?
Yes, so that's circulated, and it's also attached to the agenda.
Ah, I
So
see.
that has the proposed dates and the holidays.
Okay, great.
This is
The holidays are crossed. The start is proposed dates, and the crossed out numbers are the holidays?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody see any conflicts looking at that real quickly? And I probably we should focus in on October, since that's usually when we have stumble a little bit. So Farley, you're the one that sets these fall weekend.
Yep, so, well, that would be, the second would be prior to the fall walking weekend, since it's the 9th.
Would you prefer that to after?
It doesn't matter, I don't
Okay,
think.
all right. All right. So does anybody see a conflict to this at all? Chris?
I think it's best that we meet the week prior to the walking weekend so we can help pitch it.
Yeah, we can pitch it, you're right.
Yeah.
Anybody planning on going on world trips? That might preclude them from being able to be here. Okay. So can I have a motion to accept the calendar as presented?
Aye.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. Moving right along. Okay, so if you don't mind, Farley, we'll skip the, we'll go back to it, but for now, skip the next two. And I'd like to introduce Kim McGuire and Brian McGuire and ask that they do their presentation on Twin Brooks.
Thank you, Ann.
You want to go?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank you so much for changing your meeting date to today's date and allowing some of the people here to attend our gathering of the Save Twin Brooks group that was held on October 3rd. Some of you folks were there and you heard where we're at and where we plan to go, and we want to give you a little bit of that now. My voice is a little creaky at this point in time, so,
Oh, dear.
so I'll let Brian do some of the talking, and I'll jump in as well. Brian, you want to start?
Sure. Well, our October 3rd meeting, is this close enough?
Yeah, you have to
Okay.
get, yeah. We
Alright.
can hear you. It's the people out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Our October 3rd meeting was held at the Hyannis Golf Course. It was the first full meeting we've had in a year. 75 people signed up. We were glad of that. Another 50 showed up at the door.
Yeah.
Of course, gave her COVID.
Standing room only.
But it was a very well-attended, very, very attentive audience where we presented where we have been and where we're at and what we see for the future. It went well. It was over an hour, close to 2 hours. And we had plenty of people signed up to do volunteer work. That said, we're in a waiting stage. Just fill you in on the Cape Cod Commission where this project now sits. It gets submitted to the commission, a subcommittee gets formed to investigate the project, see how it meets I think it's the 14 goals of the commission.
Of the regional policy plan,
Regional policy plan,
14
thanks.
topics that need to be addressed in the RPP.
And that, we had 4, I believe, subcommittee hearings over the summer, investigating the various parts of the RPP. On the last one was they crammed 6 environmental topics into one evening. I think they and LMC, Quaterra, were getting anxious. That was in the very end of July. They instructed their staff to draw up a draft development agreement for submission at the next subcommittee hearing. They scheduled that for late September, and it turned out that was on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, so apparently for that reason they canceled that meeting. There has been no meeting as of this afternoon rescheduled. This morning around 9:30, I telephoned Jordan Veloso, the chief of staff, and said, hey, to find out what the status was. And she's always been very responsive, but she hasn't gotten back to me yet.
Okay.
So going forward, there'll be at least one further subcommittee hearing, and then they'll refer to the full committee of the Cape Cod Commission. Will have at least one public open meeting. After that, if they approve the development agreement without substantial modifications, we are planning to sue, to appeal. Because during these 4 or 5 subcommittee hearings, it was clear to us that many of the points raised in their own RPP were not being met and not being addressed very carefully. So it's hanging in the air. It's all we can say at the moment.
So what we've learned and what we actually observed in the subcommittee hearing meetings is that the whole idea behind Twin Brooks is we want to preserve this property for the ecological restoration of this property, as well as the Stewart's Creek and Joshua's Brook that goes down into Nantucket Sound. A number of those topics related to that kind of a goal in terms of the 14 points raised in the regional policy plan and the open space and recreation plan, which you folks have contributed to, and it's very important, were overlooked. What appeared to be they were overlooked because of the need for housing.
Yeah.
Now, we need to understand something very carefully, is that this piece of land is, as far as we can tell, the only piece of land that's looked at for development at this point in time that is in a fragile ecological area where water flows from Aunt Betty's Pond and Stewart's Creek all the way down to Nantucket Sound. This water has PFAS in it. Water has been treated and flows underneath this piece of property that also has not had all of the contaminants taken out of it. And this open space, the argument is that this golf course is not open space because it's quote-unquote developed land. Well, tell that to everybody, all the critters that live there and the people who play golf there. This serves as a very important filter of rainwater and also runoff that goes into these creeks. So somehow it appears that the ecological preservation, restoration message is being lost. And when you think about how we started, and Kate was part of this original group, is that back in 2014, 2015, 2016, there were a group of neighbors who bordered Stewart's Creek, and we worked with the town on the preservation of Stewart's Creek and the Army Corps of Engineers and the DPW in terms of how can we make this project move forward. When they were doing the restoration, they put in the culvert, which did not work, and it was over $1 million boondoggle. The idea was fine, but the execution was flawed. And so we still want to we want to restore this waterway, but what's crucial to the waterway is to do no further development of this property in this particular location. And if you look at, I keep mentioning the book At the Water's Edge, which was put out in 2018, which many of you people are familiar with. When they have a whole chapter on Stewart's Creek, and they say restoration of Stewart's Creek Marsh will reconnect the community, okay, the community, we're talking about the community, with this unique, beautiful, healthy, and resilient ecosystem and create opportunities for recreation and education. So we've been promoting that all along. However, this piece of property has been identified that it is on town sewer. And because it's on town sewer, well, of course you're going to develop it because it's on town sewer, and we have a sewering problem in the town as well as across the Cape. Is that the main reason why we have to overbuild on this property and we have to put in the largest apartment complex right behind a newly acquired hotel and conference center owned by the Irish Village, which we expect will continue to be as beneficial and profitable and busy in this location as it was in their previous location on Route 28 in Yarmouth. So now you're going to have people going in and out of there every day of the week, and an enhanced conference center and venue, a pub that's going to be open till 11 o'clock at night, and then you're going to put behind this the construction of 312 units with 600 to 1,000 new residents. At the flawed, it has a rating of F, West End Rotary. We just don't see how this can happen. But other than that, it's what's going to happen, the benefits, what we're trying to resonate is the benefits of the preservation of the property and keeping this, restoring it, and keeping it open to the public. It's open to the public because it's a public golf course right now. So Our long-term goal is ecological restoration of Stewart's and Joshua's Creek and their companion wetlands, now known as the Twin Brooks Golf Course at 35 Scudder. And this is something we haven't talked about in the past, and this is where I think we can really, hopefully, down the road, be working together. When I looked on your website, it says the Land Acquisition and Preservation Committee is charged by the Town Council with recommending parcels of land for acquisition to the Community Preservation Committee and leveraging, in conjunction with Town Manager and the Town Council, funding other than Community Preservation Act funding for purchase of land, reviewing conservation restrictions before Town Council approval, and also keeping the open space and recreation plan and open section of the comprehensive plan updated and current. So if we look at this property, if preserved, meets many of the requirements for the OS, Open Space and Recreation Plan, and also the Regional Policy Plan. So we put together a petition that was signed by at least 25 people at the October 3rd meeting. I gave you all a copy of this because, as I said, this is where I think we could work together going forward. It says and this is be signed by undersigned registered voters or property owners or residents of the town of Barnstable, to ask the town manager and appropriate staff, which could be members of this committee and members of others committees, to examine whether and how the town may acquire or otherwise assume the protection and ecological restoration of the Stewart's Creek estuary system, including the Twin Brooks Golf Course site. Identify sources of funds for these activities from federal, Commonwealth, and private sources, and from the use of Community Preservation Act funds and bond issues, and identify alternative sites suitable for needed and appropriately scaled workforce housing in our town, such as surplus state and town-owned property and underused commercial areas with existing infrastructure for water, wastewater, groceries, and other amenities, and public transportation routes. So what we're saying is, now is an opportunity for the town to step up, the town council, the town management, and the town committees that are appropriate that touch this, to say, is this the way we want to move forward on a piece of property that's so important to the ecological restoration of Cape Cod, and also for the need for open space and preserving open space. So I wanted to make sure you saw that. And when we talk about what will happen to this, some people say, well, of course, some housing will go in there. Well, the Barnstable Land Trust did propose 3 alternatives, and their low density alternative, although I think we're not in agreement in terms of how many units should go in there. It keeps a large portion of this property as open space, as well as allowing for some very creative housing alternatives, multi-unit housing alternatives on this site that would be more in line with the need for affordable housing, and also the need for building housing that's appropriate to harvest, our resources, whether it be solar power or whatever. So that's where we're at. I mean, we can talk some more. We can talk about some of the things that were mentioned in the meeting, but I know that you have limited time.
No, I think we're going to concentrate on the first section of this agenda and not worry about the old or other business or old business, because that's just, we have that on the agenda all the time. It rotates from meeting to meeting in hopes that we'll have something to say about any of those things. But other than the walking weekend, I think that we can devote most of this meeting to this discussion. I caught the word that one of the concerns was the fact that the proposal now is a complete overbuild on this property. But I also am glad that you mentioned that the group is not entirely closed their minds to the idea of some housing, because that is a focus that the town council has and the town has, frankly, is to bring more affordable housing into Barnstable. And because it is on sewer, this is a site for some housing. But again, it's also a very important piece in preservation of Stewart's Creek and Joshua Creek, and for our water quality townwide. So, so there's a balance here that hopefully when it gets to the town, these arguments can be made, and these, these discussions can be had. And there aren't any closed minds as far as we can't have open space in this section, or we have to have affordable housing in this section. There's two extremes going on here, I think, so there's a compromise somewhere.
We have to find a compromise, and we have to engage in a conversation with all parties. And I think the town can really play a role in this and get the right people in the room together to talk about this and look at how it's going to benefit the entire community and the town of Barnstable going forward.
Yeah, and I think there is some money out there, and grant money, beyond the Community Preservation Committee. There are Department of Conservation and Recreation and other, and the Water Board and other grant opportunities statewide. So do we have questions from the committee?
No, but I have a comment.
Yeah. Please speak into the microphone. Thank you.
Back when we first started as a committee and were appointed, we were involved in the Stewart's Creek. And we're all for, cleaning it up and getting this, and I know what's happened out there. But in between this time, we have made arrangements, and I say we, meaning the town of Barnstable, for dealing with developers. For instance, when we gave the Stop and Shop permission to build their big store, we agreed that we wouldn't have another grocery store within X number of miles. And that put a hardship on a lot of the low-income people who live in lower-income housing to grocery shop. And here we have the only Star Market now that's there, and people have to take a cab to get there from the Tree Streets and the whole area of Hyannis. So one action then goes on to the next step. We took Nelson Coal and Oil over so that the state over on 28 and the intersection with Will Street could increase the speed and traffic and whatever. And as you know, right now, that's part of the mess. I mean, and with traffic over there. But these were negotiated swap-offs. We had a swap-off on land with Red Coach Grill at one time.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so there are these things haven't even been vetted when you're looking at where we've taken other land for development and not thought of what the outcome and who it's going to hurt and who it's going to benefit. And putting a lot of apartments on land like that, these people have no way to get to anything. And that in itself is a hardship. It doesn't make sense if you're into planning.
Yeah, but isn't it true that these, although it's being couched as affordable housing, it's really market rate housing with a few affordable housing?
87% of these units are market rate housing.
Yeah.
And they still have not defined what those rents will be.
Yeah. So it really, I mean, people think of it, we need affordable housing, but it really isn't particularly affordable.
No.
In the sense that you think affordable.
And just, because of the people that have hardships and lack of transportation, and also the traffic situation is going to be horrible, for anybody to get in and out of there. So
Yeah,
it doesn't.
They have to look at the big picture in that whole area, because you got the Melody tent.
Right.
You've got the Rotary that can't handle the traffic that it has, the schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why not, make use of unoccupied buildings that are within walking distance of either a grocery store or a pharmacy, at least the 270 units that are going over it in the Wilkins sold property.
Yeah, that's not great either.
Yeah, but at least it makes a little more sense in that what you can walk to.
Yeah. It's true. So Doug, I know that you want to say something.
I just want to, I do want to say that I think that we continue to kick the can down the road with housing. We're at a deficit now of thousands of units of housing. And I think there would need to be a real alternative of where housing could be moved. And being on the sewer is a big deal. It really, really is. And I look at, for example, in back of the Cape Cod Mall, there's acres and acres of parking lots with nothing there. And within walking distance of sort of grocery stores, like Target has some groceries,
Right.
and
Joe's.
Trader Joe's is there.
Yeah.
It's that, but I think on the other hand, we have to own up to the fact that this is a city. This is not a little town anymore. This is a city with urban problems and moving towards urban densities. And we continue to have no smart growth strategy in this town at all.
Right.
We just keep sprawling everywhere, and we need to think of how we can have sort of small villages within the village of Hyannis like you would have in Boston. And I think everybody should go down to Mashpee Commons and look at what Mashpee Commons is, and that's smart growth.
Yeah.
That has the post offices downtown, the groceries on either end, there's housing that you can walk. We don't have that here. We've put everything in disparate parts of town.
Right.
And so I do think that people have to realize that if we're not going to put housing there, or it's going to be limited housing, we have to find other places in town where there is housing.
To answer, there is a pipeline of projects that, Kim, I think you've had,
Yeah.
a spreadsheet showing. So, yeah, exactly. So,
This is from May 12th, 2022. It's a chart of housing values, 2017 to 2022, and that was put out by Elizabeth Jenkins, and it's posted on their website. I asked her if she could post it every couple of months. We haven't seen anything recently from that. But when you add all of that up, and take out the Twin Brooks property, you have hundreds of housing units that are either proposed during that time frame, proposed in permitted, under construction, or complete. And I quoted that in our meeting.
look at it. It's interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people know that information.
Isn't it over 900 units, Kim?
900 units on that chart, including the 30 units that Stewie Bernstein wants to put in at the harbor with his property.
Clarify, that's the Planning and Development Department.
Planning
where there's
and
the
development.
webpage that this can be found at.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's another subject altogether.
But is it Doug?
Yeah.
Yeah, Doug, I just received an email from one of our group, John Ale, who has a law background, but he's not, he doesn't practice in Massachusetts. He was interviewed by the Boston Globe today, and we'll see whether or not this actually turns it into a story. But the reporter asked him to respond to specific comments about the housing advocates, which is related directly to what Doug said. And while we agree that the statement that the Cape needs housing, including some higher density housing, this isn't the location. You can find, just what Doug said, you can find disused shopping centers and parking lots and surplus state and town land, and that's something that we're beginning to look into, but that's not our responsibility. But we are looking at that as well, not only where the money will come from, but where these properties can go. So you can build 10 30-unit or 4 78-unit complexes that fill the same need as what this particular project will do, or build on former commercial sites like other 200-plus unit proposed projects near BJ's. And I said that to Elizabeth at the spring of last year, not this year, but the year before. I said, Elizabeth, why can't this go over to near the Everly project before we even knew anything about Wilkins? And she said, well, that's industrial land. She said, but maybe we ought to look at that. And what I was saying is, if we think about something of where these larger projects could go and we develop them into communities, into just what Doug said, like little villages of their own, with maybe even some better transportation, better access to shopping, that might be good. So we're suggesting that they look at some of the smaller units, smaller pieces of property, and not put the huge dense property all in one location. And also the other thing that we've heard, and I keep hearing from people with authority or town council members, and that is, if this property doesn't go in at this location, then the owner is saying that he could easily put in a 40B housing unit. So what does that mean? That means about probably 25% affordable housing in 40B, and on this site they could build up to probably 510 units. Okay, so now we're talking about density beyond density, with very few, little oversight from town authorities. The Conservation Commission would be involved, obviously, but other areas may not have as much as other regulatory agencies of the town may not have as much say because it's quote-unquote 40B housing. My comment to that is, if this owner wanted to do this, he could have done it a long time ago. He's owned this property for a long time, all right? And that's another place where I see the town could engage in a conversation with the owner before we get to the point of him saying, oh, if this doesn't go through, we're going to have 40B and 510 units. I know from conversations with different town authorities, town leaders, and town council members that that's not what the town wants to have happen in this particular location. So what I'm saying is we can really take a positive role in having a more meaningful conversation about what can go in here for the preservation, for the things that we're talking about here in this particular committee.
Yeah. So a more proactive approach rather than reactive, which is
because it's a developer, it's a private sale. And so the owner wants to sell the property to a developer, and the developer is making all the calls. And it is being reviewed by the Cape Cod Commission. But what we've seen so far is that housing trumps all. And so some of the very important areas that need to be paid attention to, including the open space and recreation plan, aren't getting as much notice as they should. And so that also raises a question that was brought up. Are we a village or are we a city? And if we're a city, what does that do to us? We have a number of different ways that we're tackling housing. We just don't think that, we think preservation at this point in time for this piece of property is more important.
There's a balance here, and it has to, and in this particular property, it has to be recognized.
It performs a function.
Yeah, so.
I just point out that I researched through the town's publicly web-accessible GIS site, and a GIS person from upstairs helped me with this, to identify all the town-owned properties in Barnstable. And I discovered there's around 100 acres of town-owned properties that would be suitable for housing and are either on sewer or on phase one expansion of the sewer.
Yeah.
And if the town itself could be more proactive, I believe, in going out to developers and say, we have these parcels, let's talk about it.
Again, proactive, yep. So thank you. Does anybody want to mention anything else, or Chris, do you have anything you want to add, or?
I'm listening.
Yep. Okay.
We did receive a photograph of a snapping turtle, and people want to remain anonymous. We even got a follow-up communication on snail mail from this.
Four by any chance?
Yes, well, I think it is. This is what it said and printed on the back. Each June, this snapping turtle makes its way across the building side of Twin Brooks and settles in to lay her eggs in the front of the pond, in the dirt in front of the pond on the building side. So, and then we got another communication last week. I'm sorry, I have to remain anonymous, but that is legitimate that this turtle does travel around here. So,
The turtle.
sign the turtle. So, the developers.
That's what they do.
Pond 4 is the largest pond on the golf course, built about 50 years ago, and we appealed with the DEP that this was a not a man-made pond. That actually the underside had crumbled, and their fish live there. There's an otter that goes in and out of there and fishes. So at the Cape Cod Commission hearing, it was mentioned that the developer will fill in pond number 4, but don't worry, they're going to move the fish. And they will also cut down over 500 mature trees, which you'll see on our website. You see it everywhere. If you go over there, take a walk, play some golf. But one of the members of the Cape Cod Commission did ask them if they would please cut down the trees that have bird nests in them last.
Yeah, the Conservation Commission, it was all about impervious versus, pervious. Yeah, and it is pervious because it does, the level of water does rise and
The level of water does go up and down. There were,
and it's all, the bottom was all broken up, and there's, grass is growing in it, and,
Yep.
so, but it means nothing.
No, well,
It just seems like everything goes to development, and it's not with any, future.
well, we need somebody within the town to be proactive and start thinking ahead.
No, but who is that?
And, work with the developer, as you say, before he gets, he has a right to do what he needs to do with this property. We need to persuade him a direction that will be good for the property, that will be helpful to the environment, that will satisfy the housing needs, that will give him a profit. We have to have a proactive conversation with him, I think.
well, they did devote one entire meeting of the Cape Cod Commission Subcommittee to transportation and traffic, and that's when the developer showed their traffic plan. And my comment on that was, obviously, the person who put the traffic plan together does not live here.
Yeah.
And it greatly, if that plan goes forward, it will greatly impede definitely 2, if not all 3 businesses in that area. So I understand that the owner of the package company, the package store, liquor store at the West End Rotary, and Cape Way Towing both have obtained lawyers and are in conversation with the developer who is proposing a meeting of the businesses and all of their lawyers, because the package company will go out of business, as will the towing company, if their traffic plan goes into place.
So, yeah, so why isn't, well, go ahead.
I'm just curious as to if you do decide to bring
Farley.
suit against the Cape Cod Commission, what will that entail? I mean, will that create a complete shutdown of this whole process, or will it just end up being a litigation that sort of goes on beside the whole issue?
It would delay the process for a period of at least 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
If there is litigation. That's all we can say right now. It really depends on what comes out of the Cape Cod Commission, and then what can be done moving forward. But it could be a delay, if not a stop of the project. For at least 4 to 6 months, which means, as was mentioned in our meeting on October 3rd, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. And something that we could all sit here and agree on today could be very different tomorrow based on the types of negotiations that are happening and the people that are involved in that. We just think that the town could step up and have a much more active role in this.
Yeah.
And we're willing to help, and we're looking at reading every document, commenting on every meeting that they had. We've hired subject matter experts. It's all on the record, and we'd be happy if you ever have questions about any particular areas to share our comments and our findings and our presentations on any of the areas mentioned in the regional policy plan.
Can you talk at all about the 3 Barnstable Land Trust alternatives that are still possible? I know some of them were made not feasible with the purchase of the conference center, but there are some alternatives left.
Yes, so the one alternative that is the one that would be most feasible. Well, 2 of them would not work because it involves using the conference center, and the conference center is now owned by the Irish Village owners.
Yeah.
And so the third alternative is the low-density alternative, and that is the one that includes, as I said, more affordable housing. I believe it goes up to about 25%, and it does have a higher number of units than we would like to see on this particular site. We'd like to see maybe 40 to 60 units, and that goes up to about 150 units. But it does preserve about 85 to 90% of the open space for recreation, education, and conservation.
And the property really is zoned for?
The property is zoned for single-family homes on 1 acre
Yeah.
sites.
Yeah. So there's some zoning that has to be redone. Well, that can be done in a regulatory agreement, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's also very interesting is that the owner of the property has divided the hotel and conference center into one condominium and the golf course into a second condominium. I believe that enabled him to sell, as of June 30th, the hotel and the conference center to the Irish Village. So they've separated how this can happen and the legality of this. It looks like it's legal, but I think going forward for zoning and planning on Cape Cod, is this how some organizations, developers are going to act, sellers and developers are going to act in order to facilitate a sale of a piece of property without having to go through some of the other steps that need to be made. The owner of the Irish Village said to me that once this particular property, the golf course, is sold, then the condominiums go away. So I don't know how that happens, but we did look into having a meeting, our October 3rd meeting at 35 Scudder, and it was decided that it was better off not to do that because the land on which the hotel and conference center sits is owned in part by the original owner of that piece of property, and he would not be happy to see us there.
So I'm not sure. I think I have to have a conversation with Elizabeth Jenkins, because I'm not sure how this land was divided without going through planning board and zoning board of the town of Barnstable.
Well, and the question is, I remember John Kenny, who some of you know from Centerville, and he was a lawyer when we bought our piece of property on Greenwood Avenue, delightful guy, and he said he was about to go in front of the town because he was going to ask for a separation of the 40 acres golf course from the 53.8 acre property. But that never happened. So the question is, does the town still have responsibility for approving the split? And if so, what authoritative body of the town has that area of responsibility. So, Anne, I think that's a great question for Elizabeth.
Yeah, and this is kind of after the fact, so it's like, how do you approve something that's already happened? Has it been recorded as two separate?
Well, John Ale told us, and this is apparently fairly common practice, go down to the Registry of Deeds and say, we're turning this into a condominium with 2 units. And then presumably, after this all happens, they can go back to the Registry of Deeds and say, we're dissolving the condominium.
Well, you're a realtor, you should,
I would say you would have to seek legal counsel. That's in my role as a
Yeah.
Massachusetts licensed real estate agent. You would have to seek legal counsel on whether a condominium could be established and then dissolved.
yeah.
Because
Or-
there isn't actually, there's no physical buildings on the second parcel, correct? So that would be a question for a real estate attorney.
Yeah.
Is the building, the property was condominiumized, did there need to be a building on the other parcel or not?
Yeah, well, my question is, how do you divide a piece of land without going before the zoning board and getting it divided? How can you record it as divided without it being divided?
Well, it's still one piece of property, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Clearly,
It
it still
is,
has
it
to be
remains one
divided
piece of
before
property.
LMC
Wow.
buys it.
It would be a question for town council.
Yeah, yeah.
To
Yeah.
determine whether that was
Yeah, I'm an
legal or
attorney
not.
and I have no idea.
No,
Town council, you mean town attorney?
the attorney for the town.
Yeah.
That would be the question for them.
I mean, Irish Village buys the resort part and the parking, property that goes with it.
Part of the property, part of the parking lot will go to the owner of the Twin Brooks Golf Course,
Yeah.
the access
so-
road.
Right.
Right opposite Cape Way Towing.
Yeah, but I'm like, but if it's still one piece and part of it's under agreement to somebody else, how do you do that?
It's an
must still-
exclusive use area.
Okay.
So what would happen is the whole parcel remains intact.
Yeah,
The carved off pieces have an exclusive use of that area of the land. And it could be any configuration.
okay.
It could be a narrow drive, it could be, 300 feet wide.
Okay.
It's whoever's the enabling, the condominiums are highly regulated in Massachusetts, and there's a whole process that you have to go through to establish a condominium.
The other thing that's not getting very much press is that this piece of property is in the middle of an environmental justice community. And what do we mean by environmental justice community? It's community of residents with generally a lower income, more density of their neighborhood, less open space. And this particular property is surrounded by that. So we've got polluted ponds, polluted creeks, environmental justice community, a rotary with a rating of F, a number of different destination or places like the Melody 10 and the public schools and the hotel and conference center already on this site. Why does this make sense? And any number of town councilors have said to me, or someone that I trust, this is just too much for this particular location. But so far, very few have gone on record. I just think we need to step it up. Let's have an intelligent conversation now, because this is happening here, and it's going to be happening all over the Cape, and I think we need to show some leadership here.
It's also a development being done by an out-of-state developer with a F rating from the Better Business Bureau. Why are we allowing these people to come in here and build truly toxic buildings on fragile land? It's crazy.
Well, we can't really talk about the developer, so. So anybody else want to say anything? So, okay. Well, thank you very much for coming again. And,
Thank you.
You know, I think we hope that perhaps the town council will be engaging in some conversations when they have their strategic plan discussions about how balancing housing and environmental concerns in the town of Barnstable.
And we also will be having, we'll work this out with Matt Levesque, but prior to the town council voting, individual members voting on this project, we have a petition that was signed by over 600 registered voters, over 300, only 300 some were required, for a separate meeting of the town, the separate meeting of the voters in front of the town council to talk about this issue. And we will have subject matter experts there and people making public comment. As Matt Levesque informed me, there will also be people who are very much in favor of this project speaking up as well, but it'll get it in front of the town.
Do we have a date yet?
No, he asked when we presented the petition last year, he said, when do you want this? And we said, prior to the town council vote. At that point in time, we'll have a much better idea of what's going on than we do right now. Think marathon, not sprint. Thank you so much for
Yes.
letting us come and talk
You're
to you.
very
Be happy to
welcome.
come back and give you an update when we have more
Yep.
information to
Yep,
share.
Yep.
I just want to say on record that the town council had the strategic planning session last Thursday.
Oh,
So it was modified because there was recognition that the town staff, town leadership staff, is already engaged in their budget planning. What I think has happened over the years is that it, smartly so, has started sooner and sooner. I think it used to be later in the year, and now they already started in September, I believe. So there was some, how do I want to say, realignment of the strategy for the town's strategic plan. And we had a session which was recorded. You can see it on Channel 18 last Thursday. And there is expected to be another more robust strategic planning session in the spring, possibly summer. So it will occur in advance of the town staff's planning calendar schedule.
yeah, okay. So we missed it for this year.
Yeah, but it wasn't, there was no public comment on it. It was more, I think
More of a strategy on how you're going to do it?
I think it was a review on the strategy that was executed 2 years ago.
Oh,
And perhaps it should have been more like evaluation / report card kind of chat. It was facilitated with a hired facilitating company. But Town Manager Els did most of the talking and addressing the bullet points that were created after the strategic planning session we had 2 years ago. And some of it is moot, some of it has been accomplished, like having an open budget format, which Finance Director Mark Millen has adopted as the way to do business. So it's nothing new to accomplish.
yeah. Oh,
So I
okay.
just thought I'd give you an update since you
All right.
mentioned strategic
Thank you.
planning.
All right. So Doug, were you going to say something?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, so everybody else, everybody said what they want to say? Okay, thank you very much. You can stay if you'd like, or you can, whatever you'd like to do. So,
I think we need to leave. This is my first day out
Yeah. Oh, geez.
in
But
public. I'm not
feel better.
contagious, but thank you so much.
Yeah.
And there were the energy and the interest and the concern from the people who were at the October 3rd meeting, I thought was amazing. People were taking notes. One woman stood up and she said, I live around the corner, I live on the same street as this development, and my real estate agent gave me appraisal of my property and it's $200,000 less. because of this particular development going in across the street. So there's impact throughout the community, so people were riled up. It was really good to hear some people talking about some very positive things about the environment and preservation.
Well, I think it also should be said that, at the Cape Cod Commission hearings, it's been very well attended and a lot of public comment during those. So there's been a lot of public engagement throughout this process.
It's good.
So,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good meeting. We appreciate your time.
thanks. So, Farley, I do want to get to your recap.
Okay, so shifting gears, we have concluded the fall walking weekend.
You got to talk up, though.
Yep, fall walking weekend went into the books. And I would say Tracy was rained out. Everybody else had a good number of people turning up, sort of.
I had 3 people
Yeah.
in Barnstable Village and 2 in Hyannis.
Okay,
I had one
yeah,
possible
person, yeah.
show up.
Anyway, well, you had rain.
Do you think that was a lack of
Well,
broadcasting, or what do you think?
I would
Weather
say,
was not so good
no, I think.
for one of
weather
those
was
days.
Friday,
good.
was it
Yeah.
Friday, was
Friday was
not-
pretty bad, yeah.
Yeah.
was awful.
Cleared up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I mean, I attended a number of the walks. I thought they were all excellent. And they think the people that attended enjoyed it. So, I mean, the hike I led, we had, I think, about 12 people. And, yeah, and it, everybody really enjoyed it. And I felt as though people engaged with the whole notion of, oh, there's a trail system in the town. That was something. But Chris's walk, Old Neck, it really bothered me
Yeah,
to see this. And I think we've got to address the issue of motorized vehicles on the trails. And,
Were we thinking motorized or mountain bike?
well, these are motorized.
That's
yeah.
ATV.
Those e-bikes, right?
They've moved out of the area of intense policing
Yeah.
where I am and moved over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
We may have to go to video surveillance.
Yeah.
That may be the next step and then I would say, in general, with a number of issues in this town, I think we first need education, that there needs to be outreach, that it is illegal to use motorized vehicles in our conservation areas, and that needs to be something that's highly publicized, and then I think the next step is enforcement. And if the town isn't able to do it, I think we need to bring the state in with the environmental police.
Environmental police.
And pretty intense enforcement.
Well, I think the cameras are,
Even, I think good signage would help, just to
Okay.
start with.
Well, we have put signs on the trails in Barnstable Village, and we've stopped the ATVs and the motorcycles there. But there's, the conservation officer has been in there a number of times.
To show that to Chris Nappy.
Yeah, I think we need to,
So it really is kind of identifying where the issue is and then getting the
Yeah.
resources put in that area for a while till they get the message that you are in the area. And then they back off for a little while anyway, so.
Well,
was that the part where it was kind of, the highway?
yeah, the highway's right there.
There,
Yeah.
but-
Mhm.
And
But they go town to town.
Oh,
too.
sure,
Was that?
yeah.
You know,
And
they
this,
cross
Neck Road from, by the college.
Barnstable into
And then
the
you
beach.
kind of end up and you're going parallel to the highway.
Yeah.
I have a suggestion. Perhaps the chair could request of the communications director that there be a note in the e-weekly that ATVs are not allowed in
Oh,
the town of
yes,
Barnstable.
we should, we should emphasize that over and over again, because they are not allowed anywhere in the town of Barnstable.
right.
Right. But I'm just saying that that might be a blurb. I don't know what the audience is, but I do think it should also be requested to be placed on the web pages for the conservation page, land acquisition, recreation. I mean, so that the same message is, pops up in more than one place.
Yeah, Sandy Neck
Yeah.
page.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Well, see, I think they have more oversight at Sandy Neck because there's
they
a
do,
gatehouse.
but
Right.
But as opposed to these conservation lands.
Range.
Are there signs at trailheads? No ATVs allowed?
We don't have signs on the trailheads,
That's
not enough.
That's a sore spot.
I know, that's what I was gonna say.
That's a real sore spot. I've been pushing for that for
Yeah.
2 years, that we identify where the trails are. And other towns, I just saw in other towns doing it now. I can't think of which town it was. The other thing is, even on the streets where there is not a sidewalk is walk left, bike right on the signs. I mean, it's literally, I live down at Barnstable Harbor. There's a sidewalk on part of it. They're walking on the other side of the street. They're biking on the sidewalk. I mean, there needs to be education, and then there needs to be enforcement.
Yeah.
In other states, this would not be allowed. The people would be fined.
well, in other towns, it's
But
not
if the
allowed to.
information is not available,
Well,
people don't know.
That's what I think that we need, that's what I'm saying, there needs to be education, and that means outreach to the remaining media that we have here, whether it's the Barnstable Patriot or the Cape Cod Times, or any of the online news sites. And that needs to go for a while, and then you have to start enforcing it.
But at the very least, we can request that of our own town's website
Correct,
and the
correct.
social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need a real education focus, and again, at the entrance of every trailhead, there should be a sign that says, this is where the trails are, and no ATVs.
No motorized.
No dogs or whatever the rules are, yeah.
There are motorized bikes.
Well, that's another whole issue, because those, and Ann can address that, I believe those are allowed.
E-bikes.
E-bikes in the state are allowed, but they are trying to differentiate what pathways they should be allowed and which they should not.
Well, I think the issue here is dirt bikes, to me, dirt bikes and ATVs are doing the most amount of damage. So, the e-bikes, that's a whole separate, entity. And I don't know that there are that many people using them. I haven't, on
I haven't
off-road.
seen them on the trails yet, but I am seeing them on the bike paths
Bike
now
paths, yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, they do seem to be out in the roads.
And they're very heavy, if you're hit by one of those.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't think they do as much damage, though.
No, and, well,
To the
no, I don't,
ground.
they just don't go fast enough, and their tires aren't quite as aggressive,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, but you can get those fat bikes that you can ride on the beach that
Yeah.
are e-bikes too.
So,
And also, the red trail leaving out of behind the West Barnstable Fire Station over to the Jenkins parking lot, it's overgrown and has a few issues. So I put in request into AmeriCorps to have them come in and help us out with it. So hopefully they're booking out now until December, so maybe I can get them.
Have you also gone through Mark Ellis with that?
No.
Okay. May I ask that you do? I mean, in addition to what you've already done. So just tell them what the situation is.
All right, well, as soon as I know that they've accepted the proposal, I will be happy to share that with him.
All right,
But
so
it's
you're
been my
not,
experience that, it's better to just try
Do
to
it?
get things done.
okay.
And they have done work for us in the past, especially Blazing Trails, which needs to be done in there,
Yeah,
so.
okay. DPW is pretty good at responding too, so I'm just suggesting that you pose the issue to, tell him what the situation is on the trail, and then he can assign it to whoever he wants. And then meanwhile, you've done what you've done,
Okay,
all
right,
two avenues.
okay, all right, we'll see who comes up
Who comes first?
Yeah.
Thank you for putting it out a
Okay.
bit. And I have a comment. I dropped off the flyers for Walking Weekend to many of the libraries.
Yeah.
And then I found myself noticing a sandwich board outside the Centerville Library, and they mentioned a local author's talk. And I went, and it was a very crowded room. It was great. And I'd be happy to take that on and visit the libraries, mid-season, and ask them if we can help create a sign. Because I'm driving down the street and I saw the sandwich board, because I don't always look at flyers or things that are hanging
Yeah.
places. But I noticed that sandwich board on the road outside of Centerville Library.
Announcing that.
Announcing different things. And so I'd be happy to go to the different libraries during the winter and ask them how we could work together, because I think Katuitt's got a sandwich board that they put little announcements.
that would be great.
And because I just saw myself, I'd heard about that, but I hadn't really thought and I found myself there.
Okay,
We could
well,
also see about some signs, the haunted cemetery tour in Barnstable
right.
Village has a permanent sign.
well, it's not
on
legal, but
6A.
I won't mention, not legal.
Well, nobody removes it.
No, they don't.
That's there every day.
Yeah.
And, a week before us having a hike, that might be something that we could do.
There is a sign ordinance, and you can do things, and Chris knows
We
this
would have
very
to
well.
find out what
You
was
put it
legal.
out the day of and take
Yeah.
it the day, take it
can
back
go
the
out 10
day
days
of.
before. It can go out 10 days before an event.
Also,
Really, they've changed it? Oh,
Yeah, they changed it from not having any limit to 10 days before. That's what.
See, that would be a good idea, is we could have signs made,
yeah.
spring walking weekend.
Just
Right.
walking weekend next
Yeah.
Saturday.
Oh,
If
and
you
then we
put it
can
up-
keep using them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Also, the fire station, we could put it up at the fire station.
That's just what I was thinking. I mean, is there any problem in getting
Yeah.
that done? And you could put the website or something.
Yeah, fall weekend,
The thing is,
fall
there'll
walking
be
weekend.
some pressure to decide when the spring weekend is and align it sooner than later, because usually you're always trying to push the walk leaders to get the information in, just to get some notice. So for us to advance the advertising,
Right.
the commitments have to be lined up sooner.
But the advertising has to be simple. Walking weekend guided trails, and then the website probably. We can't put the particulars on the
That's true.
sandwich board.
Good idea.
But just,
Yeah. More
I
information.
noticed outside the police station in Centerville, or I don't look at flyers.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So the Columbus Day weekend, fall weekend is easy to figure out. The spring one has been a little fuzzier. But perhaps you could look at the calendar and get a commitment.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to mention that the hike that I led in Hyannis, if anyone hasn't had the opportunity to see the storied life of A.J. Fickery that was
Yeah.
filmed
We're gonna,
in
where are we going
Hyannis,
Tuesday?
Yarmouthport, Barnstable Village, and Nantucket, many of the places on my hike in Hyannis appeared in the movie.
Well, you should have called it that. You should have called it that, the AJ.
And I mean, that's something some enterprising soul is probably going to do a tour of all the places that
Yeah.
appeared in the movie,
Yeah.
because it's, it really, it was dreamy how they took places and turned them into something else. Like the house was actually Parnassus Books in Yarmouthport, but
Yeah.
it was painted purple.
Purple, I know, I love that.
And then they repainted it right after they filmed it.
It's too bad, they should have left it purple. I liked it purple. All right, so, Farley, do you want to announce the meeting time for the library?
Oh, okay.
The walking,
Oh, yes, the walking library is coming up in November, correct?
November 4th.
4th, that's right. 1 to 3.
isn't that election, no, election, isn't that election day? No.
Election's the 8th.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Good thing I'm
Yeah.
paying attention. All right, so it's still November 4th from
1 to 3.
1 to 3.
3, and we're
who-
meeting is here,
Okay,
In this room?
here, yeah.
okay. I will not be able to attend, but I'll be at work, but,
Good. This will be a follow-up on one of the action items on the open space and recreation
Yeah.
plan.
so the other thing I did want to mention on, and I'm going to work on this for next time, but we would, as a committee, should be going back out to the water districts and getting an update on properties that they feel are important to them.
Okay.
And I will probably put a subcommittee together to do that and maybe divide it up. Some of us will go to Katuitt, some of us to
Okay.
that.
On that topic, I just want to mention that tonight's CPC meeting, I had a letter of intent from the Centerville, Osterville, Marston's Mills Water Department requesting a fund of $200,000 to enable the COMM to obtain the professional services necessary to quickly respond to potential properties as they become available for the protection of the COMM Water District drinking water supply.
That sounds good to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Proactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Letter of intent that, for the acquisition of a 3+ acre parcel located at 153 Oakmont Road, Comaquid.
Oh,
Is that Comaquid Heights?
Oh, the
That's
one that
Comaquid
backs up. I know where it is.
You do?
This parcel is adjacent to protected Barnstable Water District, Fire District land, and would further protect this resource.
there's also
getting
potential
started,
affordable housing development going in there, too. So,
On that lot?
no, in Comaquid Heights,
Oh,
Okay.
off of Oakmont.
If I can remind the committee that the protocol for visiting the water districts that was developed by then Assistant Town Attorney David Houghton was for a 2 or 3 members of this committee to go to the water districts and ask to be on their agenda and ask the chair that the chair of that water district go into executive session so that these discussions of private property, potential private property purchases are not part of the public or in the public domain.
Yeah, so that's why we'll go out 2 or 3 at a, 2 or 3 of us will go to one water district rather than the whole committee. So is there any other business that you'd like to discuss? I know there's other things on the agenda, but I have nothing to report on the bridge. I have nothing to report on conservation restrictions. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yeah. You want a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Good meeting. Thank you.